Hurricane Erin remains a very powerful Category 4 storm near the Bahamas, but it keeps sliding further west than expected. That shift is raising the risk of impacts along the U.S. East Coast, and North Carolina is already under tropical storm and storm surge watches as Erin's wind field gets bigger. And it's not just Erin. Another tropical storm is likely to form right behind it, and this one looks like it could head straight for the Caribbean. In this update, I'll break down the latest track, impacts, and what you need to know about both storms. But first, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here for more tropical weather updates. So here's a current look at Hurricane Erin on satellite imagery, and it actually has lost some organization since yesterday. Part of that is because of some wind shear and dry air to the north of the hurricane, making it a bit less organized, because you can see the southern side of the storm is actually looking more intense than the northern half, so the outflow is kind of being restricted by some of that wind shear, some of that dry air on the northern half of the storm. But it's still a very powerful hurricane, and you can see the eye wall looks very intense around where the eye should be, somewhere right there. And here's the current information on Hurricane Erin. Maximum sustained winds are 140 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure is at 937 millibars. And it's moving northwest at 10 miles an hour. So it's starting to make that turn, that very important turn, as it moves off to the north and to the west, where it's supposed to turn around as it goes into a weakness in the high pressure ridge that's out there in the Atlantic. And then we have the storm behind it. This is the tropical weather outlook right now. It's a 60% chance. Over the tropical Atlantic, a tropical wave located over the eastern tropical Atlantic is producing limited disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development of the system, and a tropical depression could form toward the end of the week. This system should move westward to west-northwestward at about 20 miles per hour, so pretty fast, across the central tropical Atlantic and approach the vicinity of the Leeward Islands on Friday. So this is headed straight for the Caribbean. This is headed towards the Leeward Islands, and the Lesser Antilles are expected to get hit by this on Friday going into the weekend, Friday and Saturday time frame. Formation chance through 48 hours is at 10%, but in 7 days it's up to 60%. Here's the latest cone from the National Hurricane Center for Hurricane Erin. It's expected to stay a major hurricane all the way through Thursday. So a slow weakening trend is expected, even though it's going over very warm sea surface temperatures. There is increasing shear, so that will weaken down the maximum sustained winds. But the wind field is actually going to be expanding, and that's why the impacts are going to spread out very far away from the center. There are tropical storm warnings in place for the Turks and Caicos Islands, where there are tropical storm conditions happening there right now. Going through this evening, going through tonight, there are tropical storm watches in place across the eastern parts of the Bahamas. And then as this turns to the north, it will be bringing the potential for at least tropical storm force wind gusts to the Bahamas, especially the eastern Bahamas. And then also high waves, rip currents, high surf. All of that is going to be a concern going all along the east coast of the United States. There are tropical storm and storm surge watches in place for the coast of North Carolina. As you can see right here, tropical storm watch for the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I'm expecting tropical storm conditions to happen there. Bermuda is looking like they could actually avoid this system. Now, the wind field is pretty big, so as it starts making that turn, it could actually bring some tropical storm force wind gusts to Bermuda, but the main thing is that this has shifted a bit further west. It was still going west-northwest earlier today, so this is getting uncomfortably close to North Carolina, maybe even dangerously close to North Carolina. The cone extends far enough west that this could theoretically be bringing almost hurricane-force wind gusts to the coast of North Carolina, and this is actually slowed down, and this is also another bad thing that the forecast models were showing, that if it was going slower, the slower it would go, the further west and the further south it would be trending. Those ensembles were taking it closer to the North Carolina coast, and that's exactly what we're seeing, because the faster ensembles were taking it out into the Atlantic much faster, but it's traveling a bit slower. That's giving it more time to slide further west, closer to the coast of North Carolina. That's exactly what we're seeing. Here we are with potential impacts expected. Wednesday night into Thursday, we're looking at a Category 3 or high-end Category 2 hurricane forecasted by the NHC going just off the coast of North Carolina. Then it turns towards the northeast and starts becoming a post-tropical cyclone. They're still showing it as a hurricane going to Saturday, but it could actually be more of an extratropical system at this point. Here's the key messages for Hurricane Erin. The outer bands are still affecting the Caribbean. This is moving slower than previously anticipated, and flash and urban flooding is possible as those heavy rain bands are still going over portions of Hispaniola, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the southeastern and eastern Bahamas. Tonight, even into Tuesday. Then we have tropical storm conditions expected in the Turks and Caicos and the southeastern Bahamas through this evening. Tropical storm conditions are possible in portions of the central Bahamas tonight through Tuesday. This is bringing the potential for winds going through there as well. Also, the big thing is going to be life-threatening surf and rip currents along the beaches in the Bahamas, the east coast of the U.S., Atlantic Canada, and Bermuda over the next several days. So that's going to be a dangerous thing for people out there along the coast. Then the thing that has recently happened is now we're expecting tropical storm conditions and coastal flooding in the North Carolina Outer Banks starting on Wednesday, where we do have tropical storm and storm surge watches in effect. And Bermuda should monitor the progress of Erin with strong winds possible there beginning on Tuesday. Here's the peak storm surge forecast. We're looking at pretty much up to 3 feet of storm surge going all the way from the South Santee River in South Carolina, up the coast of North Carolina, up towards the coast of Virginia. We're looking at up to 3 feet of storm surge there, even going up towards the Delmarva Peninsula to Paramore Island. But the highest storm surge is expected between Duck and Cape Lookout in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. 2 to 4 feet of storm surge expected there. Also, there's a high risk of rip currents expected along the East Coast today and tomorrow, so this could extend even further over the next few days. But we're already looking at a very high risk of rip currents going all the way from Florida, all the way up the East Coast, all the way up towards the coast of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Also, Puerto Rico still looking at that high risk of rip currents continuing. Here's a look at the HAFS-B model showing what the storm could look like in terms of the wind and where it's going. This is going into tonight, still a major hurricane. I think the HAFS-B model and really all the hurricane models for some reason are weakening this storm too quickly, actually. So this is dropping below major hurricane intensity going into early tomorrow morning, early Tuesday morning. That's not going to happen. So we're looking at more of the track. The intensity has been underestimated by the forecast models, but we're looking at still a high-end Category 2 hurricane, which is really going to be a major hurricane going into Tuesday, even going to Wednesday. Notice it does bring those tropical storm force winds close to the Bahamas, and then going along the coast of North Carolina, looking at that would be going into Wednesday night into early Thursday is when it makes that very close approach to the coast of North Carolina, looking at those tropical storm force winds with higher wind gusts expected there. We even have the area of 50-knot winds. That's 60-mile-an-hour wind where you're going to start to see some more significant damage happening just offshore. So if this shifts just a little bit further to the west, we're going to be seeing some significant impacts to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then it does nearly miss Bermuda, but still some tropical storm force winds possible there as the wind field expands very significantly. And then Cape Cod barely misses the tropical storm force wind field of Hurricane Erin, and then this heads towards Nova Scotia and even towards Newfoundland as it starts becoming a post-tropical cyclone and slowly weakening down. Here's the intensity guidance. We're looking at still a Category 4 hurricane for the next 24 hours or so before it starts dropping down to the Cat 3 intensity. Still a major hurricane for the next couple days before it starts dropping off. But even with the maximum winds decreasing, of course, remember the wind field is going to be expanding, so impacts will be extending significantly from the center. And again, here's a look at that plot that I showed in yesterday's update. Hurricane Erin has consistently gone to the very far southern extent and the western extent of all of the forecast guidance all along throughout the entire lifetime of the storm. It's been going further south than expected, and that translates to also further west than expected. So this is getting closer to the Bahamas than was previously expected, and that's why it's going to get a bit closer to North Carolina than the forecast models are anticipating. I'm thinking probably something like this, on the very far western edge, or even just a little bit to the west of the forecast guidance. And here's a look at the upper steering map. This isn't going to just keep going west. It is starting to turn. That's the good thing. It is starting to turn, so it's not going to head further west towards Florida or anything like that. But it does keep shifting west in small amounts, and those small amounts will add up and will affect the eventual track of the storm, as they have. But we have an upper level ridge right here to the east of Erin, and then we have another anticyclone upper level high pressure system to the northwest of Erin as well. We have a trough coming down, which is splitting the high pressure system in half. So then Hurricane Erin should just follow in the space that's there. And so it is going to get close to North Carolina, but it is expected to turn and not make landfall. But it is going to get pretty close. So that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of impacts and everything. Now, here's a look at the GFS model. So as we go through Wednesday night going to early Thursday, we have that close approach from Hurricane Erin, bringing in some of the outer bands into the outer banks of North Carolina. Notice this was the previous run. This is the current run. It's shifted west by actually a significant distance, so it is inching closer. That's not a good thing. Even though we're not looking at a landfall right now, it's shifting dangerously close to North Carolina, so we're looking at those impacts of tropical storm force winds, potentially higher gusts, possibly around 60 miles an hour or so, Wednesday night into early Thursday, and also potentially some rain, but the high waves, potential storm surge is going to be a big issue, especially with that big pressure gradient, as this is a very intense storm. So 940 something millibars, even if the winds are only, category 2 intensity, this is a very large category 2 hurricane moving past North Carolina. And then it does move towards Atlantic Canada, but stays offshore. But then here's the other storm system that we're looking at, that other disturbance. It is going to be moving towards the Leeward Islands, the Lesser Antilles, and the northeastern Caribbean, going into Friday and even Saturday with some of that heavy rain at least. The previous run did show an organized low pressure system. Now, depending on if it goes directly over the islands, it's not necessarily going to develop into anything significant because of all that land interaction, but the GFS model is showing by 168 hours, that's 7 days out. So next Monday, August 25th, we have a tropical depression right there. The previous run showed something a bit more intense. The models are shifting back and forth with this one because there is a lot of uncertainty, since right now it's not really doing much of anything. It's just a disturbance out there, but we'll have to watch as it goes towards the Caribbean. The GFS model is intensifying it very, very fast into a major hurricane, and then pulling it along the east coast of the U.S., and then things quiet down after that before another storm system blows up pretty quickly at the beginning of September. That's kind of what the GFS model is showing. We will have to watch this disturbance pretty closely as it goes towards the Caribbean. It is going to be going into some very favorable sea surface temperatures. There's not a whole bunch of dry air. The wind shear is not looking super strong either, so we'll definitely have to watch this storm as it heads towards the Caribbean with a lot of very warm sea surface temperatures and upper ocean heat content there that could really fuel intensification with that storm. If it gets a name, the next name on the list is Fernand. Here's the GEFS ensembles. Let's go to the latest run. We're looking at a storm moving pretty close to, if not directly over, the northeastern Caribbean on Friday, and then this turns towards the Bahamas. There is still a lot of uncertainty on where it goes after the northeastern Caribbean. Some models are showing it going towards the Gulf. Others are showing it pretty much following the path that Erin took, out near the Bahamas, but not directly hitting land, so far at least. And the latest GEFS ensembles are taking it out near the Bahamas, but not making a direct landfall in Florida or the southeastern U.S., but it does come close, and then it just goes along the east coast of the U.S., Some of the ensembles further out do take it a little bit further west towards the southeast, but yeah, they are showing a turn in the latest modeling. The Euro ensembles are showing basically the same thing, that it turns once it hits the northeastern Caribbean. It could hit the Bahamas, but then after that, it pretty much turns out to sea. There are still some ensembles taking it a bit further west in the Gulf. If that happens, if it moves into the Gulf or heads towards Florida, that's going to be something pretty significant in terms of impacts and potential intensification. So we'll just have to see what that disturbance ends up doing. We have Hurricane Erin, and then we have this. So that's pretty much what's happening in the tropics. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. Share the video, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more weather updates on the tropics. Thanks for watching. Extreme Weather Zone, out.